Flashback to 4 years ago. We see a video camera being set up. Someone sits down in the chair in front of it. We see it's Lincoln. He says, "Well, it's been a year since we won the war against the Vipers. And I've had a lot on my mind recently. And I'm making this tape because everything is going so well right now and I don't want to place this over everyone else. I've been thinking about where I started back in the early months of the outbreak. Back when the world decided to go mad. I had lost everything, just like everybody else. And for many months, I didn't see a single soul out there. The world was lost. I felt like I was the last man standing. I realize now that God was putting me through a test. I truly believe that my family probably died like everyone else did. There were many times I couldn't find food, so I'd starve for a few nights until eventually I found something. But the months got harder. I eventually found people that I thought I could trust, and they robbed me. And that's when I knew that people weren't who they were before. Safe to say that was my first kill out here in this world. It made me realize how selfish people are now. And hell, I got so desperate for food that I did the same when I met Tom and Billy. But even through that, they saw someone worth saving." And he chuckles and says, "And Tom, if you're seeing this, cheers, my friend," as he raises a beer up to the camera. And he says, "Because of that, I'm sitting here right now. And after that day, it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the people. It was about family, not just mine, but everyone in one place together. I've been feeling like my days are numbered recently. Maybe it's just a crazy thought that'll mean nothing, but I just feel like all this will come at a price eventually. I hope it doesn't. But we need to keep our legacy alive. That's why my son Billy will see one day that this doesn't matter how bleak it may seem now. Billy, this is your life. We only get one shot at it, son. Legacy isn't about leaving something for people. It's leaving something in people. And I'm grateful to every last one of you for bringing me back to the man I was, for making me who I am. And I hope I've been able to help you too. This may be it for now, and I'm sending this out to all of you. My friends, my foes, doesn't matter. You're my family, and I love you all. Lincoln, signing off."
We open with an apostle standing guard in a dark hallway. As we hear a slashing sound, the apostle's throat has been cut open, as we see a sword come out through the other side of his neck, as we see blood pouring out of his mouth and spilling all over the floor. As they fall, we see it's Ashley. We see her and Luke running through a long hallway, as we see the blood running down the hall. As they run, they quickly back up against the wall as we see 4 apostles walking back down the hall. Luke whispers, "Are you sure you can do this?" Ashley says, "I have to. I wasn't gonna let my brother do what he was gonna do to you. I won't watch any more of my brother's family die under my watch." Luke says, "Well, how kind of you. You people just killed our leader in front of us. So me trusting you is like a needle in a haystack." Ashley looks and sees the men are gone and says, "All right, we take a left, then another left, then we'll be underground." And Luke looks at her with an intense look on his face and says, "I sure hope you know what the hell you're doing." As they sneak through the halls, we see the sewer latch up ahead. As Ashley points and Luke says, "Yeah, I see it." They run towards it, but then we see 5 apostles standing down the hall from a long distance with knives out. Ashley says, "Go, get a head start. I'll be right behind you." She pulls out her swords and Luke says, "How are you going to possibly take all of them on like that?" Ashley laughs and says, "Who do you think trained them?" Luke gives her a nod and opens up the latch and then goes into the sewer. Ashley looks at the men with pure anger. They then charge at each other. Ashley jumps and slashes the first 2 heads off. Then she grabs another one and throws him to the ground. She swings at another one and he slashes her in the arm. She stabs him in the heart and he goes down. Luke sees this happen from far, but then he gets down there. Ashley then tackles another one and sticks her sword in his neck as the blood gushes out. Then, as the last one jumps her and starts punching her over and over again on the ground, she's trying to get him off as she's hearing this ringing in her ears. We see these flashbacks of blood dripping off a tree as she's reliving her brother's death. The ringing stops, she headbutts him, and he falls. She then gets up and picks up her sword from the floor, and the apostle says, "Who in their right mind betrays their own family?" Ashley says, "Betrayal from family hits harder than any other because it taints the understanding of love and fucking loyalty." And she puts her blade in his head. As she hears more apostles coming from a distance, she starts running down the hall as she starts going down into the sewer and closes the latch. We see Haley riding on Lincoln's bike. As we see her looking at his blood that is still on her hands and some of her face, we see she looks nothing but defeated. We see her driving up to the gates of Kingstonville. As Sydney and Bruce see her coming, Bruce says to Nathan from the guard tower, "Hey, open the gate." Sydney sees through her binoculars that it's just Haley and says, "Something's wrong." Bruce says, What is it?" Sydney says, "Haley, she's alone." Bruce looks worried and Nathan opens the gate. We see Haley drive in on the motorcycle as the people from Kingstonville all walk up to her. Sydney and Bruce go down to check on her. Haley almost falls off the bike as she gets off covered in blood and falls to her knees and breaks down in front of everyone and says, "He's gone. He's gone. It should have been me. It should have been me." Sydney says, "Haley, what the hell happened?" "It should have been me. It should have been me. It should have been me." And Bruce says, "What the hell happened, Haley?" Haley looks around at all the people in front of her, and she sees Julia, Catherine, and many others. As she looks at all of them and says, "Patrols are dead. Zach killed them."
He was working for these masked men, and they ambushed us in the woods. This guy named Bishop, he was a Viper. Everyone looks scared hearing the name Viper again, and Haley says, he wanted to kill me, to make Lincoln pay for what happened to this city. But Lincoln, my husband, died so we all could live. I watched him get slaughtered by his own brother. James was this man's henchman, and he killed his own brother with no second thought. His sister was one of them too. But what I saw, she was oblivious to it all. They held her back as James killed him, and I had to watch as I watched my husband still alive, and he felt it all, until he couldn't feel anything anymore. He died for us. And we have 1 week to pack up our shit and get the hell out of here. If we don't leave, Luke will be next. And she starts walking away as she starts walking through the crowd as everyone moves out of the way and lets her pass. Back with Ashley and Luke. We see 2 pairs of boots walking in the water. As we see them making their way through the sewers, Luke asks, "How much further?" Ashley says, "We're about halfway through now." Luke says, "Is there any chance you think they'll find us?" Ashley says, "I wouldn't bet on it. Back when we found this place, Bishop made it a point to stay away from here. He said it was too dangerous to go through and avoid it." Luke says, "So what makes this any different for us?" Ashley turns around and says, "Because this is the only way to slip out. It's the only shot we have." And as they arrive at a crossroad, Luke says, "What way?" Ashley looks unsure and says, "We go right." Luke says, "You sure?" Ashley says, "Yes, I'm sure. Look, I understand trust isn't coming easy for you, but I need you to know I'm with you." Luke says, "You had us surrounded in the dark. Your leader had us tied to trees, and we had to watch as your brother died brutally in front of all of us. Look, I'm sorry I'm a little cautious here." Ashley says, "How do you think I feel? Bishop and James both lied to me. They kept the truth away from me that Lincoln was alive and that my own brother voluntarily killed him with a smile right in front of me. I can't go back there. It makes me sick just thinking about it." Luke looks at her and says, "Well, for what it's worth, I'm sorry, okay? After what we did to that city all those years ago, it set this whole thing off. Look, I'm willing to believe you, okay? I hope you really are willing to help me and that you're just not leading me through some fucked up Bishop test. It's just hard to trust anyone these days, that's all." Ashley says, "Truth be told, But then 4 muddy deadheads start rising from under the water, and Ashley says, "Shit." She pulls out both of her swords and gives one to Luke and says, "You ever use one of these before?" Luke says, "I'm a military man. I'm afraid not so much." Ashley says, "Oh, you lucky shit. Just follow my lead." As she slices 2 of their heads off, Luke sticks the sword into one of their skulls, but then the sword gets stuck. Meanwhile, one of them jumps Ashley and she drops her sword in the sewer water. As she's trying to fight this thing off, Luke is trying to get the sword out of the deadhead's skull. Ashley gets tackled by this deadhead. As she's fighting it, we then see it bite her on the side. Luke sees this as he manages to get the sword out of the deadhead and runs to her and slices its head off. Outside of the sewer, Luke and Ashley are taking a breath and sitting by a tree outside of the sewer entrance. Luke walks up to Ashley and says, "Are you bit?" Ashley looks at her side and removes part of her armor and says, "It's okay. It didn't bite through the armor." She chuckles and says, "Huh, Somehow, even now, those masked assholes saved my life once again. That'll be the last time they do shit for me. Luke says, what I was trying to say before was that, I'm sorry for what they did to you. You know, when I was with my squad of soldiers back before all this, I thought the leader was on my side too. I mean, my boss acted like he was the top of the line of every damn thing. No one could ever talk him out of anything. And after the world fell and he turned on me, he actually threatened to kill me once or twice. So I do know the feeling of being betrayed by your own boss. And with a brother dead in the process, I couldn't even imagine. But if it's any indication of my story, after my boss turned on me and I dealt with him, I found your brother. He took me under his wing and gave me something to live for. Ashley has tears in her eyes and says, that sounds like Lincoln. Luke gives her his hand and says, life is short, especially in this life. So let's not waste one more second. Let's go make sure no one will have to suffer under Bishop's rules ever again. As she takes his hand, and we see they are now on the same page. Back in Kingstonville, we see Haley sitting on a dock by a river, all alone, crying. Julia walks up to her and sits next to her and says, the town isn't taking it well. People are angry and scared. Are you? Haley wipes her tears and says, I'm devastated. Every time I feel like this world is going to give me a break, someone else close to me dies. My mom dies of cancer. Less than a year later, the world goes mad. Almost a year later, my kids die. And now, my husband. The one thing that gave me hope for some kind of future was brutally killed right in front of me. No matter what I said, I couldn't get him to stop. Julia says, Hey, there's nothing you could have done. This bishop is sick in the head. You can't save people like that. Haley says, you know, the one thing I can't stop thinking is that it could have been me. Julia says, what do you mean? Haley, you've been hiding in your house and you haven't said a damn thing besides Lincoln's dead by a viper. Haley says, Bishop. He was part of the Vipers. Julia looks confused and says, I don't recall my mom taking in any bishops into our little psycho society back in the day. Are you sure that's his name? Haley says, he claimed he was. Hell, he recognized Luke. That's why he took him hostage. He was gonna kill me. But Lincoln, he voluntarily took his loss and asked for death so I could live. So we could live. Julia says, I can't believe he's gone. I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for him. He gave me a chance of a new family. He put his trust in me when he didn't have to. James. I thought Lincoln killed him. Haley says, I thought he did too. Although, Lincoln always put his family first. Maybe he thought that he was worth saving too, because it was his brother. They've been through a lot of shit together. Maybe he was still hanging on to that. Maybe he felt like he owed him for something. Julia looks angry and says, and he pays him back by taking his life. What kind of a sick mind does that? Haley says, I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna do. But they've got this place in their sights. They're probably fucking watching us right now. And if my boy, if he gets caught in the crossfire, Julia says, hey, he won't, okay? It won't happen. Haley says, I'll do everything I can to make sure that this place survives. That my son survives. Lincoln told me that I was ready to lead. I don't know if I'm ready. But whether I like it or not, or whether I'm ready or not, I have to protect the family I got left. Yourself included. Julia says, you will. And Lincoln? This will be avenged, Haley, I promise you. Julia and Haley hug, and Haley cries in her arms. We see Sydney and Bruce walk up to them, and Sydney says, I came to check on her. Nathan's on guard for now. We're looking for Tom and the others to get back soon. Haley says, I'm gonna go to my son. I have to see him. And Sydney says, hey. Your husband was one of the best friends I ever had. If you need anything, and hell, I mean anything, I'm here, okay? Haley says, thanks, Sydney. She starts walking off, and Bruce says, and if you want, when everyone gets back, we'll have a funeral for Lincoln, where everyone can share their peace and pay their respects. Haley nods and says, okay, as she walks away in tears. Back at the Apostle Nest, we see the blood all over the floor as we see dead soldiers all around, and Bishop walks up to this with a few of his men and says, act of God, act of anger, act of shame, what fucking difference does it make? An apostle walks up to him and says, sir, our prisoner wasn't in his cell. Bishop looks pissed and says, well, whose job was that now, huh? The apostle says, it wasn't me, sir. The last person that was on guard was Ashley. And Bishop says, bingo. If she gets him back to that fearless wife of Lincoln's, they'll definitely start planning an attack, and we'll lose more of our lives. I'm stopping them right now, and you all are coming with me. And the apostles all nod at him, and he says, we get back our hostage, I deal with Ashley, and you guys are with me. Let's go. As we see them leave the nest and go after Ashley, Bishop smirks and says, this isn't an act of revenge. This is just a fucking act of war. Back in Kingstonville, we see Haley going through her old closet as she's going through some of Lincoln's old belongings. We see his old jacket from his outlaw days. We see his old guitar that he used to play, and we see several of his shirts that he had. We then see his hat. As Haley picks it up, she starts tearing up a bit and says, Babe, this is yours, and one day I'll pass this down to Billy. Nothing's gonna change that, I promise. We then see an old tape fall out of the jacket pocket, and we see it says on the top, family. We see her sitting down in front of the TV as she looks like she's ready to watch it. But then, she turns it off and we see it's too much for her right now. Billy then walks into the room and says, Mom? He sees her crying and says, what's going on? Haley wipes her tears and says, oh, nothing. You know, I was just about to get supper started. You hungry? Billy says, I guess so. Haley says, you guess so? Sweetheart, you're always starving. What's wrong? Billy says, when's Daddy coming back? Haley looks upset and says, Billy asks again, where is he, Mom? Haley looks terrified and says, okay. Billy, sit down for a minute, okay? As he sits down with her, she looks at him with a sad look in her eyes. And she says, Daddy's not coming home, baby. Billy asks, why not? Haley says, Billy, your father died the other day. Billy looks sad and in disbelief because he doesn't quite understand what she's talking about because he's too young to understand. And Haley says, Billy, you know, sometimes when he comes over and he plays that video game, Grand Theft Auto, and sometimes a character will fall off a mountain and it'll say something like, Billy says, wasted, I remember. Haley looks at him and says, your father died when we were out there the other night. But he wanted me to tell you that he loves you so much. Billy starts crying and says, No. He's not dead, Mom. He's not dead. And he cries into her arms as we see Haley start crying as well. And they mourn his death together. And Haley says, "It's okay, baby. It's okay." Back with Luke and Ashley. We see them walking through the woods, and Luke says, "You with them long?" Ashley says, "Over 5 years, yeah. Me and my crew were out there surviving, barely scraping by in an old town. Our old leader was going out on a supply run when he came across him. He was in bad shape after the city. Our leader insisted that we'd save him, so we did. Biggest mistake of my life. We patched him up, nursed him back to health, and we wanted to know why he had those burns on him, and he always said for 5 years or so that he was trying to save some good people from some bad people, and that he almost died for it. That's it. He said he wanted to leave the past behind him. Till, well, you know the rest. Luke says, I was the one that tried to kill him, and I'd do it again. I won't ever regret defending my army. He was a threat that needed to be put down. You know the one thing I keep thinking? The one thing I regret?" He says, "That he didn't burn to death." Ashley says, "Well, Lincoln died because of it. And had I known my brother was out there, I'd do him the favor. Kill Bishop, and I'd deliver him to my brother myself. So I guess we both have something to regret." They then come across a sign in the woods that says, "Zilchermite, your road to survival's destination." And Luke looks shocked and says, "You see one of these before?" Ashley says, "Plenty. These signs of hope have been all around the area since the first year of the outbreak. They left these all over, sent messages, hell, even through radio too." Ashley shakes her head and says, "Broadcasting a place to go on an open channel. What kind of idiot would do that?" Luke says, "You know where it is?" Ashley says, "No clue. Probably best we don't know. When someone like that is that open about their own home, there's bad intentions behind it there. Or at the very least a catch to it. Come on, let's go." Later on, we see the sun going down as we see Ashley starting a fire nearby Big Canyon. And Ashley says, "Cold night. You know, every night I usually take a long walk around the cave at night, mostly because I can never sleep. It's always so hot outside, and then tonight, first night with no fucking shelter, and I'm freezing my ass off." Luke says, "Yeah, winter's gonna be a bitch this year, I can feel it." Ashley says, "A lot of things are gonna be a bitch this year." Luke says, "So tomorrow, we head for Kingstonville, and we get everyone ready for what's next." Ashley says, "Well, if we make it, that's the plan. Although I'm not staying. I can't." Luke says, "Why not?" Ashley says, "Come on, Luke. You really think that a complete stranger that has an involvement with my brother's death, one of the leaders of the people that killed him, you really think those residents are going to welcome me in with open arms?" Luke says, "Look, I can talk to Haley, all right? She listens to me. She trusts me. Besides, where would you go? You can't just go back to Bishop." Ashley says, "I know, but I can slow them down. Buy you guys enough time to get ready." Luke says, "You know, I was like you once. I had a partner in the military. His name is Roger. It was looking pretty bad once for me and him. I was going through a rough time in my life. I had just lost my sister of cancer. My family was all split up after that. They didn't know how to stick together. The only one that was still left in my life was my best friend. And we were in a bad fight together in Afghanistan. I knew it was just a matter of time before one of us was going to get hit next. I told Roger to run. I told him to get out of there, let me take the fall, so that he could get back to his family. But he refused. I was mad at him at first for not doing what I asked. And you know what? He took multiple hits. I don't think I've ever seen a man get shot that many times and survive. But when things mattered in that moment, I realized I still had a family of some kind. And as bleak as it looks right now, you still have a chance at family, Ashley." Ashley says, "I hope so. I just don't know if the same thing that happened to Roger can happen to me." Luke says, "It can, because he's still here. He's still with us right now. I can't wait to see my brother again, because I will,
Ashley says, "What's he like?" Luke says, "Oh, you'd love him. He's a man of wisdom, that one. Sometimes he reminds me of an old man, but he's got a good heart. Sometimes the deep life lessons are a little much and can go a little far, but we all love him. Well, except for Tom. Our buddy Tom isn't really the philosophy type. He usually kicks him out of his bar when he tells too many life lessons." Ashley says, "A bar? You have a bar there?" Luke says, "We sure do. Tom calls it Manland." Ashley laughs and says, "Manland?" Luke says, "I'm not joking. He's Canadian, so his mind is pretty fried half the time, but he's a good guy." Ashley says, "Well, I gotta see this." But then, we hear a gun click as we hear, easy does it. Ashley turns around as we see Bishop with a few apostles behind him. He says, "Nice night. You know, you should know that a failed empire has a legion of elite warriors. And you being a warrior yourself, I think it's time I officially declare you retired." As he knocks her out. We hear a knock at the door. Back in Kingstonville, we see Haley opens her door and Nathan says, "Hey, Mrs. West, I didn't want to bother you, but the community's getting scared. It's been days. Tom's group isn't back yet, Luke's gone, and now Jim's refusing any food we give him. And obviously I haven't been here long, so I didn't want to enforce anything until I got your input, of course." But Haley looks stressed and looks very out of it and says, "Thanks, Nathan. I'll handle it." Nathan says, "Hey, you need some backup?" Haley says, "The way I'm feeling today, you mind?" Nathan says, "Say no more. Lead the way, boss lady." We see her go down to his cell, and Jim sees the door open, and he says, "Oh, lovely, a visitor. I love visitors." Haley says, "You've been spared, kept under the laws of Kingstonville. And the only reason you're breathing is because there's a system. And my husband made that call. He wanted to kill you, you know, but he didn't, because he believed in the future of this place." Jim says, "Your husband was running a shit show, but don't worry. I'm sure you'll run it right into the ground, just like he did." Haley says, "He gave his life so this place could survive. He was out there fighting dangerous murderers while you were sitting comfy and cozy in your little 4x4. So if you don't want to eat, that's fine. You can starve yourself to death for all I give a shit. But I've got bigger fish to fry." She starts walking away and he says, "What laws are you trying to make when there's still murder all the time? Laws and rules are dead. I hate to tell you, but it's time to snap back into reality for a minute. Laws and rules are dead. You just haven't seen it yet. You have no experience with that kind of thing, do you?" Nathan interrupts and says, "Oh, buddy, I've been here for a very small amount of time, and you don't even know half the shit that this woman is capable of. So I suggest if you want to keep your teeth for the day, you eat your fucking meals, you shut up, and potentially on good behavior, you could get out one day." Haley and Nathan walk out, and Haley says, "He's never gonna change. He's made his choice. I see that now. He beat up a woman because he wasn't happy about the rules here and how much he was struggling, so he took it out on her. His struggles are nothing like ours. That's one thing he doesn't understand." Nathan says, "You could say that again." But then, they see an apostle standing on a hill outside of the walls. Haley and Nathan look horrified as they realize they're being watched. Haley says, "You go left, I go right. We cut him off, we get that son of a bitch." Nathan says, "On it." They then start running towards the wall, as we see the apostles running on the other side of it, as they run side by side on the opposite side of the wall. Haley and Nathan jump over, and we see Haley pulls out her machete as she kills a few deadheads that are running towards her, and she kills several of them. She sees the guy running away, as Nathan then blocks him and sucker punches him to the ground. We see Sydney on guard saying, "What the hell happened?" Nathan says, "He was outside the walls watching us. God knows what they're planning." Haley puts the machete to his throat, and Nathan takes the guy's mask off, and Haley says, "You think he's alone?" Nathan says, "I wouldn't put anything past these people at this point." "Haley, you know we have to kill him." Haley says, "We could.
Or he just may be exactly what we need. Everyone looks confused as Haley takes him hostage. Back with Ashley and Luke. Ashley wakes up with a bag on her head as we see Bishop standing there smoking a cigarette, and Luke sees Ashley's awake and she whispers, "How long was I out?" Luke says, "Good few hours at least." Bishop says, "We're taking you back to the nest and we'll sort things out. Simple. Very, very simple stuff." Ashley says, "We should have left you out there to burn." Luke says, "I should have finished the job when I had the chance." Bishop says, "Oh my God, the fucking West family really are the same, ain't they? They just don't shut up. They always have to prove they're right all the damn time. Here's the deal. That place will be mine at the end of the week. Things will hopefully go as planned, as I made a deal with Mrs. West, and if she doesn't want any more of her family to die, she will do as requested. And everything will go smoothly from here. Now all I ask from you on the way back, don't tempt me to cut your fucking tongue out." Bishop starts walking, and Ashley says, "If you're taking us back, I'd suggest sleeping with one fucking eye open." Bishop smiles and puts his sword up to her neck and says, "My eyes are wide open, and all I see is a little snake who killed her own people." Ashley says, "Oh, I'm sorry, you mean your sheep?" He takes her pinky finger and cuts it clean off as she screams out in pain, and Luke says, "Enough!" Luke says, "You've done enough." Bishop says, "Well, I guess that goes both ways now, does it?" He punches Luke in the face and says, "Well, let's start walking, little sheep." We see Ashley's bloody fingers as it transitions to the Apostle locked up in Kingstonville's prison, getting one of his fingers cut off by Haley, and she says, "So where are you hiding out at? I suggest you speak unless you want me to take another." But the Apostle doesn't speak. Haley looks shocked and says, "Doesn't matter. You're gonna speak whether you want to or not. It's really not a choice after all." She then stabs him in the right eye as we hear the Apostle screaming out. She punches him and says, "Where's your location? Where did you take Luke? Tell me!" The Apostle looks scared and says, Okay, I give up, okay?" Haley says, "Get to it then." The Apostle says, "You know, I see what Bishop was saying about you. You're a one-woman army, ain't you? Well, congrats, sweetheart. You got it. It's an old World War II bunker, made to look like a cave. You go down to Dawson Avenue and take a left near the seaside. You'll find it." Haley drops the knife and says, "And that's all you had to say." The Apostle says, "So let me guess. You're gonna kill me now? You know what, just fucking get it over with, lady. Honestly, I've already felt all the pain I'm gonna feel." Haley says, "Oh, really? Pain? You want to talk about pain? Pain is waking up every day wondering if I'm going to be doing the right thing. Pain is wondering what my kid is going to be like without his father. Pain is the whole fucking world we live in. That, my friend, is pain." Sydney and Nathan are standing there, and she says, "You two, grab a squad. We're going to take a little visit to this bunker bullshit. We're going to get Luke back, and we're going to get all the answers we need." Nathan says, "You're thinking of a trade?" Haley says, "Eye for an eye. Heads or tails. Doesn't matter. Our little burnt friend is going to have some choices to make." We see Bishop walking with his men on the road. Ashley and Luke are tied to a rope, and Bishop says, "Almost home. Well, pretty soon it'll be one of two." We see a group of deadheads across a little overpass. We then see their heads turn a little different than usual, as we see a big group of them start running towards them. Bishop then panics and pulls out his sword and says, "No ammunition. We keep what we have." Bishop says to the two of his men, "Hold them." Bishop and his men start killing one after another. The dead are so quick that a few tackle one of his men down to the ground and starts ripping their guts out. Bishop looks pissed and kills several of these deadheads.
Ashley gives Luke a signal as they see their opportunity. Ashley headbutts one of the apostles as he falls to the ground. Meanwhile, Luke takes the rope and uses it to strangle the other one till he passes out. They both grab the knives and Ashley takes her swords back as they start cutting the rope to escape. Meanwhile, Bishop and his men look tired as they kill the last few. Ashley and Luke cut through the ropes and quickly start running away together. Bishop and 3 of his guys are the only ones left, as Bishop kills the last one with pure anger, and one of his guys is saying, "Sir." We see one of his guys is still alive and bleeding out, and Bishop sees him dying. As he stands over him, the man says, I'm so sorry, sir. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Bishop says, "No, it's not on you. Ashley is why we're out here, and she will pay for this. I promise you that." The apostle pulls out a letter and says, "Please, give this to Cheryl. Please. Tell my wife I didn't die a coward." Bishop says, "I will, son. Thanks for everything you did." As he starts to slip away, and Bishop puts his sword into his skull and ends his life. One of his men then says, "Sir, you hear that?" They all hear the sound of more dead coming from far, and Bishop says, "We gotta go back home now. We can hide underground until they pass." But as they then start going down the overpass, they then see blood in the grass as Bishop sees his men have been killed and Luke and Ashley are gone. As Bishop sees this, as the men ask him, "Should we follow them?" Then another one of his guys yells, "Bishop, we got company!" We then see a truck driving up on the overpass as it stops right in the middle, about 50 feet away from them. We then see Haley ride in on Lincoln's old motorcycle. As she gets off, and Sydney, Nathan, Vivian, and a few others all get out with weapons. They bring out the prisoner, and Haley pulls out a knife and holds it to the guy's throat. Bishop says, "Well, shit, Haley. You just couldn't do 1 week, huh? You just had to go against our agreement just when things was going so damn perfectly." Haley says, "Huh, and you act like you held up your end of the deal? You had people watching our every move, surrounding us in the dark, raising paranoia among my people. Looks like we're not the only ones not owning up to our end of the deal. So here's how this is gonna play out. Either I start by cutting this man's throat wide open, then my people move on to the rest of you, and I get my friend back. Or you show me that you even give a shit about some of your people like you claim you do. And for your man, you give me Luke back. And we all go home today." Bishop laughs and says, "You got balls there, Lady West. It's why I picked you over your husband." Haley says, "You didn't pick anything. He gave his life for his family, the community that you're trying to take. And a little birdie told me that you have yourself a real nice place to live in as well. You know, at first I went along with your bullshit, so my son didn't have to become an orphan that night." Bishop says, "Oh yes, Billy. Isaac told us all about him. Sounds like a good young lad. Too bad he won't have a home soon enough." Haley says, "Oh, we're just redecorating, motherfucker. Or to put it simply for your rotting away covered in ashes brain, we're not going anywhere. And if I had to guess, even if we did leave, even if we went along with your little game, Luke would still be dead, and I guarantee you would have picked us off the door as we tried to leave. That's why you had people watching us. You were waiting so that you could swoop in and take everything we had in there. Then after you kill us, you'd take the residents that remained and you'd get them to fall in line with your bullshit. And you'd raise an army of psychopaths. Is that it?" Bishop laughs and says, Well, that does sound like a great idea. You may have just gotten me there, Lady West. But like I said before, you leave, the place is mine. You fight back, the place is mine. Either way, that place will belong to people that deserve it. And either way, the West family is gonna get turned inside out." Haley says, "Oh, you wanna fight? That's not what we're here for, motherfucker.
But if you're so hell-bent about something that happened several years ago, then we can stand here and kill each other for all I care. But I'll have you know that this is not what I want. I'm tired of killing. I'm tired of losing. I'm tired of watching my kids have to keep running away from their home. I did it once before, and I'm not doing it again. But if you want me to kill, you say the word, motherfucker. I'm all ears. Bishop says, well, why don't you remind your people of what Lincoln did? All those innocent lives. Mothers, fathers, children, so many others burned. Well, I guarantee you didn't tell your people that at all, did you? They probably all think you're a hero. They probably all think that you did the right thing that night. Huh? That life that you're living is a long dead world that will cripple right in front of your eyes. And I'll be the one to show you. And this trade you were proposing, well, that's already done.
Haley looks a bit worried and says, where is he? What did you do to him? Bishop says,
oh, unfortunately, I didn't do anything. You know, you and the West family, I feel like I'm at a fucking daycare, and I gotta keep an eye on every last one of you. Lincoln's little sister escaped with him. So this trade is done.
Haley looks angry, and Bishop says,
it's sad, really, that it had to happen this way. But let's face it, we all knew it was gonna come down to this one time or another. And you know what? I really wish I killed you instead. You're not a useless waste of a person. Not like Lincoln was.
Out of nowhere, a knife is thrown and it gets him in the shoulder. Everyone pulls out their weapons and start charging at each other. We zoom out to see it's Luke that threw the knife as Ashley says,
ah, shit, you almost had him. Luke says, damn it, I was going for his throat.
Ashley says, yeah, you military guys are really better with guns. She gives him one of her swords, and as we see them run underneath the overpass to Haley's side as they run up there to go join them. Haley slits the apostle's throat and pulls out her machete as she runs towards them. Bishop then takes cover behind a car. We then see Sydney swings at one of them as he tackles her to the ground like she's nothing. Nathan then saves her and stabs one of them with a knife. Vivian takes on one of them and grabs them by the collar and smashes their head against the railing of the overpass as we see a lot of Haley's fighters are getting killed. Haley and the others are fighting against the apostles as we see Bishop with his knife in his shoulder up against a car as he's watching a few of his men get killed in front of him. We then see he looks pissed and pulls out the knife out of his shoulder as he pulls out a sword and starts trying to get to Haley. But then Vivian cuts him off and starts swinging at Bishop. Vivian takes multiple swings at him and misses. Bishop says,
a little slow there, lady. Let's see what you really got.
She then tries again, but he's way faster. Bishop then says,
here, let me help you out there.
He stabs her right in the gut and he looks at her with a death stare and says,
you're welcome, bitch.
Nathan then covers for her and manages to knock Bishop down to the ground. Nathan gets a few punches in on Bishop, and then Bishop pushes him off of him. Luke and Ashley make it to the other side of the overpass, and Sydney sees them, and Sydney says, oh my god, are you okay? Luke says, I'll be fine. Haley says, there's more coming. We gotta go. Ashley sees more of them are on their way, as she sees most of Haley's men are in bad shape, and she says, go, in the woods, now. More are coming. Haley sees more apostles are coming and says, go, now. We see them all running into the woods for cover as they run a good ways away, and Haley says, they're right on us. We can't let them catch up to us. Ashley stops and looks back and then hears them coming from a distance and says, you all go. Get back to your people. Get them ready for what comes next. I'll hold them off for as long as I can. Luke says, no, I can't just let you. Ashley says, there's no time to argue. Not if you want to live. They're gonna kill you all. I can slow them down for as long as I can. I can buy you enough time for you to get out. Haley then looks at her and says, thank you. And Ashley says, it's what my brother would have done. Now go. As we see Haley and the others all run away, as Ashley sees them flee, she picks up her sword and stands there ready to take them on as she says, thank you, big brother.
This one's for you.